A proper Victorian lady would have on gloves. She would have her hat. She would also have a parasol. Victorian ladies did not go out in the sun. If you had a tan, you were considered part of the working class. So it was a sign of prestige if you had very pale skin during that era. So ladies would use parasols and their hats and sometimes even fans to shield themselves from the sun. The first thing that a Victorian woman puts on in the morning, as you learned from the last show, were her stockings. So this is really her first accessory of the morning. It's not the corset, contrary to popular belief. Again, the corset would rub her skin, so that went on after the undergarments were layered. These are a very unique pair of boots in that before 1900, they didn't have a left and a right foot. These were the same, and if you'll notice, they are very, very narrow. So not only did the Victorian woman have a very tight corseted waist, but it was a sign of beauty to have small feet, so they would force their feet into boots that were a little bit smaller for their foot. So they were really, really uncomfortable. And that was for the working class, middle class, or the upper class. These boots also have laces on them. The laces tell me that these were worn by an average everyday person. If you were wealthy and of the upper class, then you could wear a pair of boots like this. Notice these have buttons on them. The button boots were custom made for the Victorian woman's foot. So that's a little bit different if you're wondering why some of the boots had buttons and why some had the laces. These were special made. And some of the buttons are missing, but if you were over 120 years old, you'd have a few of your buttons missing too. And these are very, very special to me. These are the first pair of gloves that I ever purchased when I went to my first estate sale at the age of 15. These gloves started it all for me. I couldn't resist them. They were just so beautiful and handmade and delicate and wonderful. So this actually started my whole collection right here. And what's unique about this is it's in the design of a spider's web. And this is one of my favorite pieces in my collection. This was given to me by a friend, and I just love the design. It has the little bit of spider web dangling on the bottom, and then the design all through it. It's velvet, and it has pretty clasp here, and of course the original chain. Sometimes the chains break off, but this is a wonderful example of the incredible handwork, the needlework that Victorian women were skilled with. This is a navy blue. It has some metallic beading on it with the tassel, and this has a cute little clasp. If I can get it open for you. Sometimes they're very stubborn because they're older. There we go. So this little lid pops off, and then it spreads open, and you can put a couple coins in here. That's probably about all you can fit. Thank goodness they didn't invent the cell phone back then, because it was never going to work. So this was for the lady for her coins if she had to go to the market, and it folds back up and it snaps shut, and I think it's adorable. My grandmother brought out a shoebox full of photos, and this is one of the photos that she had given me. So she brought out a shoebox of photos from the past But little did I know that she actually brought out a shoebox of photos to my future, because I'm able to do this now and share it with you. Now this lovely collar is a wonderful piece of Irish crochet lace, and the work on this is just exquisite. Absolutely beautiful. I hope that you can see the detail in this, and it had to have taken hours to put this together. It's absolutely beautiful. It has a little snap in the back, hook and eye, and it also has what we call boning. The boning in the collar was to keep the collar up straight so that it didn't droop. And many women would change the look of their wardrobe by changing the collar and also cuffs on their outfit, so they would get more wear out of their clothing. And this was, of course, worn by a very wealthy woman because of how ornate and fancy it is. Interesting piece in here. This was a specific carrying case for something, and when I acquired this, I knew that it was old. I bought it at an estate, but I wasn't quite sure what it was used for. And when I got home, I looked inside, and when I opened it, there was an indentation shape of like a hook thing inside the leather. And then I realized it was for the hook, the shoe button hook. This was the holder for the lady's shoe button hook. And this was used to pull the buttons through. Let me demonstrate for you. This would go into the shoe, and then they would grab the button and pull it through. So getting dressed was a chore. It was not something you did in a hurry if you had button boots. And to make matters even more difficult, can you imagine having a squirming baby? Now, aren't these the cutest things you've ever seen? I just love these little boots. These are little Victorian baby boots. And yes, they had to use the hook to pull the buttons through, even on the baby's shoes. Now that had to be a test of patience, if you ask me. I just love this. This is an example of the circumference of the waist of a Victorian lady. This came from a gown. And yes, believe it or not, that was the circumference of her waist. Now I measured this, and it came out to 24 inches. So yes, the corset was definitely doing its job. I want to demonstrate to you proper Victorian woman hairstyle, so bear with me. I'm going to take my hat off and my hat pin. And the lady had to wear a lot of pins to keep her style up. But I am what you would call a modern day Victorian woman.